Hi there, and welcome back at yet another Azure Stack webinar. We've gave you a whole weekend to digest all information we put in your minds on last Friday. And today we're back with one of my colleagues from InSpark. His name is Joran Markx. Joran, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Joran Markx, working also at InSpark as a cloud consultant at the hybrid data center team. And I'm mainly busy with building hybrid clouds, including Azure Stack.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter. You see the tag in the slides.
All right, thank you. So if you're wondering who's moderating this session, well, I'll be moderating this session, so this is an InSpark party. My name is Bert Wolters, and I'm also a consultant at InSpark. I'm an MVP in Azure, and I chair the Dutch version of Experts Live. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can, at Bert Wolters. And if you want to check out the things I'm blogging about, that's on www.azureman.com. So if we take a quick look back at the previous webinar we did, that was last Friday, we talked a little bit about what Azure Stack is, what it can mean to your business. Is it for everyone? We've discussed that in a long time. And we looked at the flavors of Azure Stack. We looked at the single node POC. We looked at the multi-node commercial offering, which is currently shipping. And we also looked a little bit about a commercial offering doing your POCs when you don't have your own hardware. Now, we looked at the vendors who can deliver Azure Stack to your data center. And we have taken a little look on the roadmap of things to come. So if you want to recap that session, you can. Just follow the subscription link I posted earlier, and you can review that session once more for your liking. If you want to have another look at the roadmap, it is just available by Microsoft. It's a white paper on the roadmap of Azure Stack, and I highly recommend for you to check it out. So Joran, what's the agenda for today?
Yeah, today we are going to look more inside of the Azure Stack, how you can integrate it in your environment. Because if you just have Azure Stack, just without any networking or identity, you don't have anything from it.
All right, so you made a small agenda. What are the topics for today?
Yeah, we will start with networking. So how can we connect Azure Stack to your current network or to the internet, or maybe you want to use it in another situation like disconnected.
Okay.
The other topic is about identity. So how can we authenticate against Azure Stack and provide access to external users and your administrators?
Mm-hmm.
The third topic will be more about administration. So we also want to make backups of Azure Stack in case of emergencies. And we also want to monitor the system and make or provide subscriptions and offers to your customers. So we will take a look at that. And at last, we have some frequently asked questions around what we heard from the community and our customers.
All right. Well, without further ado, let's start by the networking part. I think one of the most important parts and complicated parts of Azure Stack.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So how do we integrate this into our own data center?
Yeah, if we just have Azure Stack like an island, as on the slide, you have a disconnected scenario. So you have Azure Stack, you can use it from the internet, and you can have access to it from everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But more commonly is that you want to integrate it in your own infrastructure because you already have any hardware and app services running or services running in your own infrastructure, and what you want to make some hybrid connection between Azure Stack and your current infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look in what the physical components are in your Azure Stack from the mind of networking. So if you have an Azure Stack, you will have two top-of-rack switches. And the top-of-rack switches are connected to the server nodes, which will provide the services in Azure Stack. And these top-of-rack switches will provide the entry point to your existing infrastructure. There's also a BMC switch, which will be providing the drag and ILO to the servers. And the routing on the top of red switches are performed by the Border Gateway Protocol, well known, or you can use static routing to make it connect to your existing infrastructure. In the future, you can also have multiple Azure Stacks and connect them through aggregate switches. So they're not directly connected to the top of rack switches, but they will need an aggregate switch to make connection to the other. So these are the physical components. And the cool thing about Azure Stack is that's completely built on the Windows 2016 network infrastructure. And that's also with Hyper-V networking and software-defined networking. On the bottom, you see the physical NICs connected on the server nodes, and this is the entry point for the networking in the software-defined networking of Hyper-V networking. And you see three different networks which will be used for the virtual networks for the tenants in Azure Stack, and you have a transit LAN for communication outside of your Azure Stack, and you have the management VLAN. So you see that this software-defined networking is also the basis of the Azure Stack networking, which provides access to your endpoints, which you will define in your Azure Stack. Normally, setting up this software-defined networking in Windows 2016 is quite complicated, and the good thing about Azure Stack is that it will be provided you as an appliance, so you don't have to configure it yourself. You just have to define which networking you want to use, and during the installation, which will be performed by the hardware vendor, you will provide your subnets, which will be used in the Azure Stack and will be configured on the top of rack switches.
So just a quick question on that. Since Azure Stack is a highly standardized product, does Microsoft tell you which subnets you can use?
No, you can bring your own subnets, so you have to define 6 subnets. Or 5 subnets, and those subnets you can bring your own. So you can choose your own subnet ranges, and but they cannot be changed afterwards. So you have to think about it at front when the appliance will be installed in your data center.
So again, something to keep in mind when sizing the solution.
Yeah, that's
is your subnet large enough?
Yeah,
but I'm thinking since the integration and implementation of this is being done by a vendor.
Yeah, that's right.
They can help you out with that as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. Well, they will take you to the networking process and let you help which kind of subnets you want to use in your Azure Stack.
All right.
So if we take a look at the subnets which will be used, we have the external virtual IPs. And that's mainly the most important one, because that will be the endpoint for your services hosted on Azure Stack. So if you have app services or virtual machines and you publish an endpoint using public IP, this will be the range where the IPs will resist in.
Okay.
You have the switch infrastructure where the switches, the top of rack switches are in, the more infrastructure for the Hyper-V nodes, and you have a private network which will be used as the infrastructure network for the Azure Stack virtual machines. And the last one is for the BMC, which will be used for the monitoring and ILO and track for your hardware. So some of these subnets are routable from your own network, but not all. So the private network, which will be used inside in your Azure Stack, will be protected and cannot be accessed from outside of your Azure Stack. And the infrastructure network for the connection to your Hyper-V nodes will be blocked by ACLs on your switch. So if we take a more look at the scenarios where you can connect your Azure Stack in, we have one of the scenarios is the disconnected scenario. And in the disconnected scenario, the main example we hear is on a boat or on an industrial environment where there is no access to internet or it's not required. And in the disconnected scenario, you will do not have any connection to Azure or to the internet, but you can have access to internal resources. Maybe you have some systems in your test lab and they provide data for your Azure Stack. And that can be routed through a firewall or maybe directly through the top of rack switches into your Azure Stack.
Yeah.
The other scenario is internet connected. And I think that's a more common scenario where you want to publish services to the internet from your Azure Stack. And this is also the scenario where service providers will make use of, because they will provide access to Azure Stack for multiple tenants through internet.
So these are really different scenarios, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the disconnected scenario also has some downsides or drawbacks. So if we look at it from an updates perspective,
Yeah.
how does that work with the not connected scenario?
Yeah, if you're not connected, you still have to update. That's true. But yeah, you have to bring your updates to your data center or to your Azure Stack using some removable storage.
Yeah,
So
and again, if you get the internet connected device set up, the solution,
yeah,
we can easily leverage the Azure Marketplace.
yeah, and that's also in the disconnected scenario. You have to import your images into your Azure Stack yourself, so you cannot make use of the marketplace.
So that will take a lot of hours and man hours to create the same functionality you would have had in a connected scenario.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So you really have to think about it if disconnected is your scenario.
Yeah.
So
All
it's,
right.
I think the internet scenario will be for the most of the situations the right one.
Yeah.
And additionally to the internet, you can also have the connection to internet and intranet. So making a hybrid connection between your Azure Stack and your internal network. So you connect your Azure Stack to the internet, maybe through a firewall. It's not required, but that's maybe your company has some security requirements that will actually require a firewall. And you can use also your firewall or router to net to your internal networks and make services communicate between your internal network to Azure Stack without routed to the internet.
Yeah, because security-wise, I do see a couple of things there. Because when we deploy stuff in public Azure, I'm a public Azure guy, Microsoft takes care of DDoS protection for us, right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So when normal companies then provision an Azure Stack, who takes care of the DDoS protection?
Yeah, you have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
So that's actually where your firewall or additional services comes in. Or you can use cloud services, which will provide DDoS services and route it into your Azure Stack locally.
Yeah, so it's not just I'm bringing this secure bubble into my data center.
No, it is.
With this great secure bubble, you might encounter some other types of security you need to have in place.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Completely right. So, but how can we connect to these services which are hosted on Azure Stack? So, it's quite the same as you have in public Azure. So in public Azure, you connect to your service through a public endpoint, a public IP. You have maybe a VPN gateway which can be connected, or you have an app service or load balancer which publishes an IP to the internet. And in Azure Stack, that's quite the same. So you also have the endpoints, and you have software load balancers and VPN gateways which can be used to connect into your Azure Stack. So in that way, you can have servers talk to each other over the VPN, whether it's still internal, but you create a site-to-site VPN with your internal resources. And for the Azure Load Balancer or the public IPs, which will be used on the app services in Azure Stack, you will have also an endpoint from your internal environment on the VIP range we talked about earlier. So that's the way how we connect to the resources in Azure Stack. So that's you can almost compare it to the public Azure cloud.
All right, so we do have a lot of smart customers out there as well. What if they ask, I've got this I Scuzzy device sitting also in my data center network. Can I reuse that I Scuzzy device with VMs in my Azure Stack?
That's a quite complex scenario, and but it is actually possible.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful with configuring this because it will take some preparation on your top of rack switches.
Yeah, because all traffic that is leaving the Azure Stack will go through BGP.
Yeah.
Mainly.
Yeah, or static routing.
Yeah. So that will create a lot of loss in performance. So. Please be careful with that. We get this question lots and lots of times out in the field. Can we reuse certain things from the data center inside Azure Stack? You might. It's still the universal consultancy answer. It depends. But please make sure you test it out very well before you do that. And also, like our colleague Mark always tends to say. Is that possible in public Azure nowadays? No? Okay, then it might not be a wise decision to do that in Azure Stack as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to use the Azure Stack just as you use Azure.
Yeah.
No, that's right.
So with Azure Stack, Microsoft is currently saying, well, that is a very good portion of your hybrid cloud. When I do a hybrid cloud now in my current customers' data centers, I mainly use ExpressRoute to connect those two.
Yeah.
Does ExpressRoute work in Azure Stack?
Well, ExpressRoute is part of the public cloud currently and not of Azure Stack. So, but you can leverage ExpressRoute to connect from your Azure Stack to Azure, but it's not a component of Azure Stack. So if you have in your network configuration configured your ExpressRoute, you can just route from Azure Stack over the ExpressRoute to Azure.
All right.
But you cannot connect to Azure Stack or create a circuit as a customer of Azure Stack. So if you are a service provider and you want to provide sort of express route to your services, that will be a normal MPLS VPN and not an express route as it is in Azure.
All right.
So that's different. And I'm not sure if Microsoft is planning something like that. Do you know about something about?
I haven't heard on the roadmap sessions, at least, that the ExpressRoute is coming to Azure Stack. I think for now we're leveraging the Microsoft Azure Public ExpressRoute for our hybrid connectivity.
Okay, thanks. So, if your Azure Stack is connected, which kind of virtual network resources we can use in Azure Stack? It's a subset of the features which we have in Azure. We have the virtual network. We can define virtual networks for several subnets. We can define network security groups. We can have network interfaces for our virtual machines. And we can define custom routing to provide access through virtual appliances. Also, we have load balancers to publish services to public endpoints using public IP addresses. And we have the DNS services which provide DNS resolvement of your external DNS, but also to resources hosted in Azure Stack. And you have the VPN gateway, which can connect you to your local network, or maybe to other sites, other branches, or maybe other Azure Stacks or other Azure environments. So ExpressRoute, Traffic Manager, Application Gateway that are currently not part of Azure Stack, but maybe in the future. So let's take a look at the site-to-site VPN. As I just say, to connect your network through a VPN, you can use the VPN gateway on your Azure Stack. And this VPN gateway will give you access to your local site or to another Azure Stack, or maybe to a public Azure VNet. So you can build it just as the way as you're doing now with hybrid cloud. So that's not really different from what you're doing today. And yeah, this makes it able to create a network which will span virtual networks or cross premises in your cloud, local cloud, and hybrid cloud. The domain services will be able to delegate your zone to the Azure Stack DNS. And this is required to, if you are hosting app services, they will also have a DNS. And you don't want to make any DNS changes in your public DNS for every app service which you're running in Azure Stack. So what you can do is provide name services in Azure Stack to provide this resource naming in your Azure Stack itself.
So with this domain name services, what you actually do is take away the domain name hosting from your hoster, and host that one on the public end of your Azure Stack, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that all changes which are required to reach services in your Azure Stack are automatically provisioned in the DNS. And
that you can also offer that service to your customers then?
Yeah, that's right.
So if a customer, for instance, deploys an application inside Azure Stack, in Azure Stack at the same time, with the same template, you can provision your DNS services, right? So I understand that this is a very technical story we're telling right now, about networking, about administration. But we still encourage you to ask questions if you do have them. Don't spare them. We've got a whole team here on the social media, which is there to answer your questions. And if they can't answer it, they'll patch them through live to us. So if you do have questions, don't be afraid to ask them. That's why Joran is here.
Okay, thanks. So the virtual IP addressing we have on Azure Stack, there are some, by default, some access points to have a tenant portal, like portal.azure.com, but then to your Azure Stack. We have an additional admin portal, which is new because you don't have this portal on public Azure. This is a portal which can where you can manage your Azure Stack. You have the ARM endpoint. That's the point where you can publish the API, where you can publish your new resources to your Azure Stack. And alongside, we have some virtual IP addressing around storage with some additional resource provider like Key Vault, and you have ADFS and Graph. So that are already public endpoints which you will have when you are starting with Azure Stack.
So are you saying that when I put my Azure Stack out there on the public internet, just as with public Azure, anyone can try and access my storage account?
Actually, yeah. If you haven't configured any firewall rules but before you're at front of your Azure Stack, that's true. Yeah. So if you directly publish it, these endpoints will be published. Yeah. That's
so,
right.
and I think that's a really important remark here to place out there.
Yeah.
That when you are publishing your Azure Stack to the rest of the world, you are publishing your services to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So again, your attack threat can be a lot bigger than just by posting some kind of web portal where people can get services from. You are in fact publishing a lot of endpoints for a lot of services out there.
Yeah, that's right.
So your vulnerability will be, most likely, be a bit higher.
Yeah, that's really true. And so for every tenant which you will host, if you will host multiple tenants, they will also have endpoints to their services, and they will also be available on the internet if you're in the internet connected scenario. So let's talk about integrating your identity. Also there we have the connected and the disconnected scenario.
All right, so we're not talking about connected networking now anymore, but we're talking about a connected identity now.
Yeah, that's right.
That's probably some kind of hybrid identity involving Azure AD.
Yeah, that's true.
Or not.
Yeah, so in the connected scenario, we're able to connect to Azure Active Directory and provide the authentication in the Active Directory you currently use, of the Azure Active Directory you currently use.
Yeah.
And if you have multi-factor authentication, conditional access, all these features will also be provided for access to your Azure Stack.
Okay, that sounds kind of safe.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And additionally, if you want to host a multi-tenant environment, you can have guest Azure Active Directories, which will provide access to your customers to your Azure Stack. So they can also use their own secure authentication mechanism to access the services in the Azure Stack.
Okay.
In the disconnected scenario, you can use your AD, your current AD, and Active Directory Federation services to authenticate against your Azure Stack, and then you are not connected to the Azure Active Directory. So that's completely individually and not connected to the Azure Active Directory.
Okay. So do you have any examples when to use one or the other, or is there a preferred way, or?
In the scenario where you want to have multiple tenants, then the connected scenario is the best one, because you then can have access to your guest tenants or to your tenants using their own Azure Active Directory. So they can use single sign-on to their services, and also for the billing, for if you want to have costs which were made for these customers needs to be sent to these users, then you can leverage your Azure Active Directory to provide this usage. in a scenario where you are disconnected also from the network, then you don't have the choice to connect to Azure Active Directory. So then you will use the disconnected scenario and will have your own Active Directory for authentication.
All right. And last Friday we saw that we also have an ADFS and an AD server inside the solution, inside Azure Stack.
Yeah.
So we'll probably do some fancy federation in a disconnected scenario.
Yeah. In the disconnected scenario, you have to do some federation between your Azure Stack stamp ID and your own ADFS environment.
All right.
But let's take a look in that. If we are in the single tenant scenario, we have the portal, the Azure Stack integrated instance, and we have a single directory tenant which is used for authentication. So that's a one-on-one connection between the two environments. So every user which logs into your Azure Stack will be authenticated through the same Active Directory. In the multi-tenant environment, multiple tenants will be connected to your Azure Stack. So there will be one tenant which is for administration and for billing, and other tenants are for authentication for the other tenants in your environment. So if you are a service provider, you can give access to those subscriptions in your Azure Stack for the specific Azure Active Directories. In the disconnected scenario, we have the stamp ID in Azure Active Directory itself, and it will be federated to the customer ADFS, so to your own ADFS environment and your existing Active Directory. So you will still have some kind of single sign-on, but not through Azure Active Directory.
Okay, and I see you see some AD graph thingy in both slides.
Yeah.
So what's AD graph?
Yeah, the AD graph will provide information about users to using the APIs, which can be REST, and this will be used to get some profile information about the user.
All right.
So the third topic, administration. I told you about there is an additional portal which will be used only for tenant administration, and you will see some new components which are not in the public Azure cloud. And that's about region management, about subscription and offer management, and you can define plans for your customers. And that can be customers inside your organization, so you can provide services for your different business units. But in the multi-tenant scenario, it can also be used around over the several tenants which are connected to Azure Stack. So region management is you only have one region at this moment, so that's the region management isn't that much. But within this region, you can also see the health and the storage usage of the device, which or of the full Azure Stack appliance.
Oh yeah, because when something is wrong within my Azure Stack, look, I don't say that it will fail, but let's assume something is wrong.
Yeah.
How will I know?
Yeah, well, Azure Stack will provide you some APIs, and if I go to the next slide, you will also see that there are REST APIs from Azure Stack, which can be monitored by a monitor solution. The physical service uses the BMC to provide events to the hardware lifecycle host or the monitoring solution. And you have the network device, which will provide SNMP monitoring. And you can provide ticketing and use your own system to monitor your Azure Stack. And that can be System Center Operation Manager. There's a special management pack for Azure Stack which can be used now. And there are also third parties which are providing packages to understand Azure Stack.
All right. And then I know what's wrong.
Yeah.
Can I then log on to a host and restart services or restart a virtual machine?
No, that's not possible. You have to. Azure Stack is an appliance, and when you are in the event that you cannot resolve the issues yourself through the portal or through the APIs, then you can contact your vendor or Microsoft, and they will sort out where the issue will be handled.
Yeah.
So the ticketing to Microsoft or your vendor, they will take care of if it is a hardware problem or if it's a software problem, and we can help you with your issue.
Yeah.
And if they need access to the actual resources, they have a two-way handshake where you will give them access, and they will there's a two-way handshake to get into the systems where you cannot come yourself.
Yeah.
So in that way, they can resolve issues that were not at the front interface.
Yeah, so that's like what we call the break the glass principle. In case of a fire, you see these signs throughout the building, break the glass, and someone will come over and help you. On those recovery VMs, those are the only VMs where you can log into. There will be a service there to do the handshake thing with the vendor, and then the vendor can remotely log on to the system and help you. Inside the Azure Stack management portals, there's a limited notion of management. So what you can see there are the virtual machines, the resource providers which you can reboot, which you can reseed. But after that, everything is up to Microsoft and the vendor. So that'll give you some insights into the procedures regarding issues with your Azure Stack.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks. So usage. When you use Azure Stack, you still have to pay for the VMs or app servers that are running on the Azure Stack, just like you do on Azure, but it's a smaller amount of money what you have to pay to an hour. And in the disconnected scenario, it's quite different, because then you have the costing of the full availability of the resources in your Azure Stack.
Yeah.
The usage will be pushed to Azure, to your Azure subscription. So if you already have an Azure subscription, this will also be used for the billing of your Azure environment if you assign the same subscription to your Azure Stack. And in this way, the costing will be also pay as you go, but you also have to invest in your hardware, and that's quite different from the public Azure.
Yeah, true.
So Azure Stack, you also want to make a backup of the system. And
do you?
Yeah, really. Because in case of an emergency like a fire, you want to be able to rebuild your system. And the system in this situation is the Azure Stack itself, so the configuration. So you want to back up your configuration to a safe place, which is outside of your Azure Stack. And it needs to be an SMB share, which can be backed up by another tool. The resources in Azure Stack, that's quite the same story as in the public Azure cloud. So you can use VM agents to provide the backup. And
but when you're saying it's the same story as public Azure, do you mean we've got a recovery vault on Azure Stack?
No, it's not on Azure Stack, but you can use the recovery vault in Azure to back up your resources in Azure Stack using the backup agent. So then it's just like another on-premise service which you have installed the agent on.
All right.
And for all other services, you also need the same backup and restore scenarios that you have in the public Azure cloud.
All right.
So updates and servicing. Azure Stack will provide the updates monthly, maybe some more days, but and these updates, this will be orchestrated automatically in your Azure Stack. So they will pop up in your tenant administration, and you can install in a time where you want to install it. So that's quite different now from Azure. Although I heard last week that at Ignite there was some announcement about the public Azure and operation or update time. So you can choose your own update time.
True.
But at Azure Stack, you really have the control. to determine when you want to install this update.
Oh, that means my customers have the control.
Actually, the manager of the Azure Stack environment.
All right.
So
if my customer says, well, normally Windows updates, we tend to be late for a month with those just to see what they do in the rest of the market.
Yeah.
Can they do the same with Azure Stack?
Yeah, you can do the same with Azure Stack, but there's a limitation. So you can postpone your updates for 3 times.
Okay.
And then you will come in a supported scenario.
All right.
So it will still work, but if you have some troubleshooting issues, then
Yeah, the first thing they'll say is, well, please update your Azure Stack.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
That's right. Your Azure Stack does also consist of hardware, so you have also updates of the drivers and firmware updates. Firmware updates are not provided by the update process of Microsoft, so they will be provided through the OEM, so the hardware vendor. The drivers, like networking drivers, will be provided actually through the Azure Stack infrastructure update.
Okay.
So that brings us to the very frequently asked questions.
All right.
And I think this question is actually already answered. So is ExpressRoute available in Azure Stack? No, it isn't. But you can use Azure Stack or ExpressRoute to connect to your public Azure over your existing infrastructure.
Yeah, but this from a security standpoint, and this is just a live thinking of myself, could give me some issues when I'm doing a multi-tenant Azure Stack, right?
Yeah.
Because all of the traffic from all of my customers is leaving my network through the TORs, through the top of rack switches, and then going through the same ExpressRoute pipe, if you will, towards those service endpoints.
Yeah.
So where all of the traffic from my customer comes together, how do I know that customer A isn't looking into the data from customer B? I'm not sure if we can solve this one during this webcast, but just giving it out there to you guys to think about in your whole security scheme of things.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to think about.
Yeah.
So, and the other question was, can we defer updates? You already asked me the question.
Oh yeah,
so,
sorry man.
That's no problem. So you can postpone the updates for 3 times to be in a supported scenario.
All right. Then I think that's all we have for now. We do have some other things we can share with you. For instance, we've talked about the POC as a service quite a few times.
Yeah.
If you don't have the hardware readily available, if you don't have a hardware vendor who wants to lend it to you or sponsor you with it, and you don't have the cash to buy a temporary server, we have this offering called Azure Stack POC as a service, where you can, in fact, rent Azure Stack. It starts off with 1 week. You can make it longer as you wish, and there's even some additional guidance and consultancy involved. So we talk to you, we ask you what's your goal for Azure Stack, and see that you reach that goal within the specified time. If you want to know more about Azure Stack, there's also a lot out there on the social media. There's a dedicated Twitter handle for that one, and a Facebook page, facebook.com/AzureStackEU. And if you are more of a book reader, there will be a book available really soon, which is Managing the Microsoft Hybrid Cloud with Microsoft Azure Stack and Azure. It's written by nerds. Can I say nerds in this show?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's written by nerds, by really well-known community experts, and they basically take apart the Azure Stack and show you all inner workings, all communications, all integration schemes as well. I'll have one more look at my my cheat screen. Oh, we do have some questions. This is a nice one. If you combine 2 Azure Stacks with an ACK switch.
Yeah.
So we discussed that one, yeah? Does that mean that you have a single multi-node Azure Stack or just 2 network-connected Azure Stacks? with 2 domains, 2 endpoints, 2.
Yeah, currently the last one.
Yeah.
So if you are going to have 2 Azure Stacks now and connected through an aggregate switch, you will just have 2 portals, 2. Everything is double.
Yeah,
so it's not.
And currently for IA, initial availability, we have to have a single scale unit, which where all the nodes are connected to the same top of rack switches.
Yeah.
So I was thinking in my bad thoughts, well, you might want to split up a single scale unit across 2 AG switches for redundancy. No, sorry.
It's not going to
For now, scale unit, top of rack switches, that's it. So currently the AG switch is your own data center switch, basically.
Yeah.
So sorry for that one. Can you tell something about the license for Azure Stack? Do you have that one?
Yeah, so when you buy Azure Stack, there are no licenses involved. But when you're running resources, then you will actually pay for every VM or app service which you are running on Azure.
Yeah.
And that will be on the hourly normal usage scenario.
So basically when you buy an Azure Stack, you buy the solution, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So you buy the hardware, you buy data center services, you buy support, you buy a solution.
Package. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Then if you want to run services on top of Azure Stack, there are 2 ways. Or you pay a whole heap of money per processor, or you pay as you go. And there are even within the pay as you go model 2 different ways you can go. Doing only IaaS, which is cheaper.
Okay.
Or if you want to do IaaS and PaaS services, so SQL databases as a service, MySQL, Key Vault, websites, those kinds of types of services, you'll pay an additional fee per VM, per service, per month.
Yeah.
So
that's only in the capacity model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and for the rest, if you need a SQL server, for instance, to run your SQL DBs as a service, yes, your SQL database server needs to be licensed as well. So, what type of license? I don't know, because I'm a technical dude. We over at InSpark have this very gifted guy. He knows everything about licenses. So if you have more specific licensing questions, contact us and we'll take care of you. I think that's the basic gist of that one.
I think so.
Let me see. In the dev kit, you can see the infrastructure VMs, and you can even run the stop Azure Stack command. But that does not exist in the real product, right? Yes, you are so right.
Right, yeah.
That doesn't exist in the real product. So again, if you're looking at the dev kit or the Azure Stack single node POC, yes, you can see all virtual machines there because you can log into a host.
Yeah, you have far more control in your POC environment or your software development kit.
Yeah.
That's right.
So can we do that in the real deal?
No,
No,
that's not
no.
possible. No.
So currently, when we log into the Azure Stack POC, we can install whatever we want there.
Yeah.
Can we do that in the real deal?
No, we can't.
Okay, so there you go. There are indeed a lot more options you can do with the single node POC than with the real multi-node system we run in production. Yeah. There's only one thing we don't have in POC that we do have in multi-node production, and that is Microsoft support. If your POC doesn't want to provision, please follow the forums on Microsoft.com and get your guidance there. There's no official support for the POC from Microsoft or vendors. And I think that about wraps up all questions we had here. Okay. Joran, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Bert.
So today in this webcast, we talked about the network integration of Azure Stack. We looked how we can integrate with identity systems, and we looked at administration, how we can administer the Azure Stack, what we can and cannot do with backups and monitoring. For now, have a great day. Look into your Azure Stack POCs, and if you have any more questions, you know where to find us. Have a great day and see you next time.
Bye.